And the conversation gets spicier with every passing day. Today we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks, because when it comes to some of the contracts they need to sign for next season and beyond, we had ourselves a conversation brought up on Carlsson Price by Frank Seravalli. Now I'm going to leave two different links in the description. Firstly, to this Carlsson Price video with Frank Seravalli on the program, and also we're going to leave a link in the description to today's edition of Specters Hockey. Because what Lyle Richardson does on Specters is he summarizes a lot of the extra stuff that Seravalli says about the Canucks in this article. So links are in the description of both of these sources, as of course big shout out to the folks at SNP. But today's conversation is going over the Vancouver Canucks and Filip Hronek, because when it comes to what Seravalli thinks about the situation, there may be some reason to believe that the $8 million price tag actually might be fulfilled. Now, before we dive into that, Hronek, 26 years old, 6 feet, 187, right-handed guy, signed to the end of this season, making $4.4 million. He expires as an RFA. Hronek has 45 points in 73 games played this season, on pace for about 51, which is good. That's a pretty alright number in isolation, but the problem with Hronek comes when you acknowledge that he's got 0 points in his last 10 games. He hasn't been nearly as effective in the past few weeks than he was at the beginning of the season. He's one of the NHL's leaders in giveaways, I'm pretty sure. I think the Hockey Guy talked about that yesterday. But Hronek and his play has been for sure a step above some of the other right-handed defensemen this team has had in the past. He's better than Myers, he's better than, I don't know, whoever else, Tucker Pullman, you could say, a bunch of the other guys that have rotated around on the right side over the years. Hronek is better, but is he $8 million a year better? Because that was the dollar amount that was leaked out into the media, saying that the Canucks apparently offered Hronek something in the $7 million range and he rejected it. He wants 8, Is it appropriate because Quinn Hughes is making 7 point something? So could Hronek realistically make more money than Hughes? And would that be okay? But leave it to Frank Seravalli to go out there and spread some other ideas on the SNP show. Take a look at this video and the caption. Here's what Seravalli said and why Hronek at $8 million is not an overpayment for the Canucks with the salary cap going up. Demko is here. I know the coaching changed, the roster has changed, the Canucks had an engine, and to me, Hronek was the jet fuel that allowed them to take off. $8 million in 2028-2029, and the cap should be somewhere between $120 and $125 million a year. $8 million is nothing at that point at 8 times 8. It's way better to have the known commodity that you know works versus having to go out and find it again. Hronek is a half a point a game defenseman and he's a right shot guy. That's going to be the going rate. I don't see that number falling off a cliff. You don't need him to drive his own pair. You've maybe got one of the best pairs in the league, maybe the best pairing in the league. Is Quinn Hughes going to be pissed off Hronek's making $150,000 more than him, knowing that he's going to be making $14 million a year himself in a few years? And this is an interesting perception about how this contract could be laid out, because the way Seravalli talks about it here, it's with the perspective of a 2028 hockey fan analyzing the cap and discussing whether or not $8 million a year for Hronek is fair. Now, the comment about Quinn Hughes potentially making upwards of $14 million in a few years, I definitely don't disagree with that. That's a pretty reasonable contract, I feel, for Quinn, especially if the cap goes up as much as it can. $120 million is uncharted territory for hockey fans in 23-24. So in 2029, for example, is that the point where Filip Hronek is at his most valuable? Because when you think about it in today's standards, Filip Hronek making about 10% of the Vancouver Canucks salary cap and making more money than Quinn, it does not look ideal. Mostly because, as we've said, Hronek has struggled a little bit the past little while. There isn't any one thing that I think Filip Hronek has over Quinn Hughes, aside from the fact that he is right-handed. So is that price really worth it to say, all right, well, we'll pay him $8 million a year right now. We'll give him a contract higher than Quinn, which is going to be okay because in 2029, 5 years from now, then the contract is going to be worth it. Honestly, I don't agree with the idea of placing your value in 2028, 2029 as justification to let Hronek make more money than Quinn Hughes. I mean, you could bring up the arguments all you want. Oh, Hronek drives his own line, he gets this amount of points, he does this, he does that, but anybody who watches this team can understand that paying anybody more than Quinn Hughes kind of has a certain aura attached to it. Like, you have to be a certain kind of player to be able to make that money. Pettersson, okay, he makes more money than Hughes. I can understand why. Miller making more money than Hughes? Yeah, I can understand that too. Hronek making more than Hughes? And the justification is, oh, it's because in 28, 29, that's when the contract is going to be fine because Hughes is going to make $14 million and the cap will be up at 120. I don't agree. If the Canucks can sign Hronek to something in the $7.2 million range, like, honestly, that's kind of pushing it still too, but I feel like that's a lot more appropriate in this situation in comparison to the $8 million range just because of the precedence it sets amongst the players on this team. I always talk about it, but the Lidstrom argument is the one that I think needs to apply here. Hey, Nick is our captain. He's the best defenseman in the league. You're not making more than him. Sorry, no matter what your name is, you're not making more money than Nick Lidstrom, and this is the kind of strategy that allowed the Wings to build a team that was competitive. They weren't thinking about the cap in 2005, 2008, whatever. Sure, the salary cap rules were different back then. You could sign different contracts that were a lot longer, etc., but still, that was the standard there. Your captain, your top defenseman, Nick Lidstrom, that was the limit. And for Quinn, I'm so immovable in that idea that Quinn should be the upper limit too. So, I don't know, Frank Saravalli was talking about it on radio, saying that the $8 million AAV contract could be appropriate. Let's go over on Specters Hockey and talk about what Saravalli said in regards to Nikita Zadorov, because he also talked about Zadorov. It's not talked about in the text of the tweet, but if you scroll down to the Zadorov conversation, it says this: Zadorov is finishing up a 2-year contract with an AAV of $3.75 million. Frank Saravalli does not think the Vancouver Canucks will re-sign the 28-year-old defenseman. Saravalli believes Zadorov's asking price will be around the $5 million range. He said the Calgary Flames knew his number would start with a 5, which made it easier for them to trade him to Vancouver earlier this year. Spector's note goes out there and says the Canucks had to boost their defense core in the short term. They were willing to make that short-term move for Zadorov, even at the risk of losing him in this summer to free agency. They could try to keep Zadorov following this season. However, they won't have enough room to meet Zadorov's asking price if they sign Hronek to an $8 million AAV deal. That's the thing, man. Save as much money as you can with the guys that are going to be negotiated. And for Filip Hronek, I don't know. It's just $8 million. It does not feel right. Maybe on paper, maybe the age, maybe the points, they all look fine, but just in terms of caliber of play, I don't know, man. A lot of Canucks fans watch this team, and a lot of fans talk about these players and these contracts and everything, but I don't see anybody in the Vancouver scene at least saying, yeah, no, Filip Hronek plays like an $8 million defenseman. Like, he's worth that. Just give him the money because the cap's going up. Like, if you're not worth the money, I don't think the team should sign you to the money. I don't know, man. Like, if you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments. Do you actually think Filip Hronek is worth $8 million from the caliber of play that he has? You can say that Quinn is underpaid. 100% Quinn is underpaid. He should be like a $12, $13 million contract based off of how he's able to impact the game. Even if you take that away, though, I don't necessarily think it makes Hronek an $8 million defenseman. Like, I don't know, that's just my opinion. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comment section as to Nikita Zadorov being around the $5 million range. Honestly, Zadorov has been good enough where it's like if the Canucks gave him a $5 million AAV contract, I would understand why. There are good enough things in the way that he plays defense and how he's able to contribute offensively, plus the fact that he's big and he doesn't have as many terrible decisions on the ice as Tyler Myers does. Myers at 6, already overpay, but Zadorov at 5, you're pushing it a little bit, but I still think it's within the realm of acceptable. I think Zadorov maybe at his best would be somewhere in the, realistically, like $4.2 million range. I think that'd be like the best contract available for the Canucks if they really wanted to push it. But of course, if Zadorov goes to the market, he may get more than 5, so maybe he doesn't have any reason to stick around. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Vancouver Canucks and whether or not an $8 million AAV contract really is appropriate here. Links are in the description to the Carlsson price tweet as well as the Specters Hockey article. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.